Well, let's come to this next interview then, and the question really is localization undermining the country's growth prospects? And hopefully we can continue our conversation. We have a good and stable line with Ann. She's with the Centre of Development and Enterprise, and she's going to talk us through some of these big points, the 7 sins, effectively, around localization. And just confirm that you can hear me better now.
Hi, Imam. I can't hear very well, but I've been listening to your program about rising costs of food and your listeners complaining about that. And that's one of the critical issues in our new report. We are arguing that the government's policy of localization is driving up costs in all sorts of areas and for consumers, but for our society as a whole. Now, when you think about localization, it sounds like this is a good policy. Who could be opposed to it? It will help local firms and create jobs. But the truth is, it's not creating jobs. It's making our economy suffer rather than expand. Let me give you 3 examples. So the government is saying that any procurement of goods and services by the state has to be from local firms. Well, this is driving up costs because the only reason to force people to buy local is if they don't do it naturally. And why wouldn't we do it naturally? Well, because the goods made in South Africa in a particular sector are not cheap enough and they're not good enough. That's the only reason you would buy an imported product. So we are making state procurement more expensive, and the state is running out of money, so they have less and less money to provide the services that everybody needs. But it's worse than that. We're doing the same for energy. So energy costs are going up, and we all know, as we sit in the dark with load shedding, that what we desperately need is cheaper energy and much greater supply. But in fact, from Eskom complaining about the effect of localization on the cost of transmission lines, which are 2.5 times the price in Namibia, to new energy producers of alternative energy, where economists are telling us that the cost of localization is driving that up by 10% in many cases, and in some cases as high as 60%.
All right.
So this
and if I can, because there's just a treasure trove of things that you have said there, and I know we're never going to do...
Imam, I can't hear your question.
All right. I'm so sorry, Ann. I really am. I'm so frustrated because there are some important points that I wanted to... wanted a bit more detail on, particularly around the concept of what is driving up costs and why, still locally produced goods can't compare from a quality perspective with those that are brought in from the outside. Unfortunately, yes. So that's the second attempt at trying to have this conversation with Ann. Very, very important discussion, but hopefully we'll be able to get Ann on another day to talk about this report that they have now put together, the 7 deadly sins related to our current policy trajectory. And one of the key bugbears that the CDE is raising is their belief, based on research, that government in formulating some of these policies that are meant to locate localization or to promote localization in South Africa aren't necessarily data-driven. And that's a big deal. How do you define and write policy that's not driven by data in the space that it's meant to serve? So Ann Bernstein there. You can read that report, by the way. It's widely disseminated. And as I say, hopefully in the next few days, it's a subject that will hold. We'll talk to Ann again.